no fear of trouble. After John Brown was hanged, Harriet had to hide for a while, but she would not stay hidden for long. She was never afraid of getting into trouble. One day, she was passing through the town of Troy, New York. A slave who had run away from the South was being held there by the police. His name was Charles Null. His father had been a white slave owner, and his mother was only partly black, but he was still a slave. Charles's wife was a slave too. She had come north to be free, and Charles had come north to join her. But the police had caught him, and they were holding him until his master could come and get him. Then they would send him back south to be a slave again. Harriet went to the building where the police were holding Charles Null. On the way, she told other black and white people about it. Pretty soon, more than 1,000 people were standing outside the building to block the doors. Harriet made herself look like an old woman and went inside. Charles was being held in a room upstairs. She went up to see how she could help him get away. When the police took him down the stairs, she opened the window and yelled to the crowd, "Here he comes! Take him!" Then she ran down and grabbed Charles and pulled him away through the crowd. The police beat her with clubs, but she would not let go of Charles. They beat Charles too, but the crowd kept getting in the way of the police. They would not let the police take Charles back. Harriet kept Charles in the middle of the crowd and got him down to the river. She put him on a boat to get across. On the other side of the river, he was caught again by the police. But Harriet and the crowd crossed the river too and grabbed him again. Harriet was right in the middle of all the fighting. The police started shooting and won the fight. They got Charles back, and he was sent back down south to be a slave again. A few months later, the town raised a lot of money. They sent the money down to Charles's owner to buy his freedom. So Charles Null was brought back to the North. He was a free man after that. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the United States. The white people in the South were afraid that President Lincoln would end slavery. In 1861, 14 states in the South quit being part of the United States. They decided to start their own country. They called their new country the Confederate States of America. The Confederate States began the Civil War by forming an army and attacking a U.S. fort in the state of South Carolina. Now there was war. The war was going to decide two things. It would decide if the Confederate States had a right to leave the United States. It would also decide if there could be slavery in this country.
All right, guys. So now we're just going to go over what happened in the beginning, middle, and end of the chapter to help you, excuse me, before you answer your questions. So let's talk about in the beginning, the police held Charles because he was a runaway slave. The police were going to give Charles back to his master. Then Harriet got 1,000 people to stand outside the building where Charles was being held. And Harriet dressed like an old woman and went inside to help Charles escape. In the middle of the chapter, Harriet yelled to the crowd to help Charles get away from the police. The police beat Harriet and Charles, but the crowd would not let the police take Charles back. Harriet put Charles on a boat to get across the river. The police caught Charles again. Then Harriet and the crowd grabbed Charles back. At the end of the chapter, the police got Charles back, and Charles was sent back to his owner. But the town raised some money, and the town bought Charles's freedom. So he ended up being a free man because the people in the town helped him. All right, so now you can go and answer your questions on your Google form. All right,